All right, y'all. Welcome back to the Problem With, and we're doing an early off the record. I'll be gone for a few days. I'll be celebrating with my family. I'll be taking the surf break, and I'll be celebrating my kid's first birthday. I'm excited for that. So, before we continue, I wanted to get my thoughts of what happened this week and get this out as soon as possible. And then we still have some episodes of The Lies We Tell on Monday and Wednesday. They just be a little bit. I'll share them on schedule, and then I will also have tomorrow. You'll have my the American War Machine series. Tomorrow's part 3. It's very amazing. So I will suggest for you to listen through the whole episode. But anyways, we in this, if you remember, off the record is a space where we pull back the curtain and what's really happening, not just what's trending. And this week, yeah, let's not pretend that it was business as usual. It's amazing how it went from last week. It went from Iran, in a war in Iran, to in Israel, which it still could happen. But they blitz it to what happened this week. And so let's start with that. With this week, we're talking about a party that didn't just flirt with dog whistle politics. They grab a megaphone and shout it out. From a not-so-coded racist blitz in New York's mayoral race to a Supreme Court hell-bent on unraveling every thread of civil rights progress. And then we got to talk about the hurricane warnings and climate emergencies that corporate media barely blinked at. Oh, and let's not forget, this one is for myself or anybody, but it's important. Let's not forget they can go and push to silence educators in red states like Oklahoma. Because yeah, that's still happening. So let's make something clear right off the top. This chaos, this constant barrage of bad faith policies, racist rhetoric, and performative outrage, it's not dysfunction. It's design. It's meant to wear you down. It's meant to divide. And it's absolutely meant to distract from who really holds the power and who they are doing it with. So today we're talking right through the noise. Let's start with New York, where the GOP has decided that the real threat to democracy isn't corruption, isn't poverty, isn't gun violence. No. Apparently the threat is progressive ideology. Let's talk about the mayoral race and how it's becoming a case study in manufactured fear, racist dog whistles, not even dog whistles, racist open racism, Islamophobia, and xenophobia, and what happens when power sees progress knocking on the door.
The difference between myself and Andrew Cuomo is that my campaign is not funded by the very billionaires who put Donald Trump in D.C. I don't have to pick up the phone from Bill Ackman or Ken Langone. I have to pick up the phone for the more than 20,000 New Yorkers who contributed an average donation of about $80 to break fundraising records and put our campaign in second place.
Donald Trump would go through Mr. Mondami like a hot knife through butter. He's been in government 27 minutes. He passed 3 bills. That's all he's done. He has no experience with Washington, no experience with New York City.
Look, it's true that I don't have experience with corrupt Trump billionaires who are funding my campaign. I don't have experience with party politics and insider consultants. I do have experience, however, with winning $450 million in debt relief for thousands of working class taxi drivers and actually delivering it to the working class people I claim.
A political upset here in New York. Democratic socialist Zohran Mamdani is the likely winner of the city's mayoral primary. He declared victory after former Governor Andrew Cuomo conceded. Cuomo was backed by big money donors, but Mamdani, a 33-year-old state lawmaker, was endorsed by Senator Bernie Sanders as the anti-establishment candidate. Republicans are slamming Mamdani as anti-capitalism and anti-Semitic for criticizing Israel, which he denies. He says he's focused on the cost of living.
We have won because New Yorkers have stood up for a city they can afford. A city where they can do more than just struggle. One where those who toil in the night can enjoy the fruits of their labor in the day.
The national Democratic Party is at a crossroads. Should the party, try to stay with the old guard, more established incumbents and folks who have been prominent voices in the party for a long time, or should it go and try to usher in a new generation of leadership? In New York, at least, we know the real enthusiasm lies with progressives and with young people.
Well, Cuomo is not ruling out a possible return to the race as an independent candidate in November's general election.
Okay, so as I mentioned in the intro, we're going to start in New York City. Because this week was loud. And not just loud because there was cheers for progressive, but it was a cheer, not a cheer. There was loud because there was there's like example of racism. Like this week was racist, it was terrifying, and it was honestly, it was kind of inspiring for the progressives. Let me walk you through it. So Sohran Mamdani, if you didn't know the name already, you're about to. He just pulled off a huge upset in the New York City mayoral primaries. A progressive Muslim born in Uganda, raised in Queens, pushing an unapologetically pro-people agenda. And he won. Not barely. Not on a fluke. He built a movement and it worked. Now, if this country was functioning like a healthy democracy, we'll be talking about rent relief, about transit access, about taxing billionaires who treat Manhattan like monopoly. We'll be talking about the policy. But no, what did the GOP do instead? Oh, they lost their damn minds. Because, buckle up, y'all, because this has got really, really, really good for these people. Because they show their face. And we all know how racist they are, but they made it public. So let's start with a few of these lines. So Donald Trump Jr. tweeted, and I quote, I'm going to see if I can do his voice. I'm old enough to remember when New Yorkers endured 9/11 instead of voting for it. That was more like a Trump, but you get it. Like, what? Let's be clear. He just compared a democratic election to terrorism because a brown man with a Muslim name won. And that's where we at. Then comes Elise Stefanik, who didn't waste a minute. She fired off a fundraising email calling Mamdani a Hamas sympathizer and said, let me quote you, "His vision for New York makes me sick." Really? The vision that includes rent control and public transportation makes you sick? Or is it just the man delivering it? Oh, and of course, because we're living in a cartoon dystopia, Marjorie Taylor Greene, the MVP of ignorance, posted an AI image of the Statue of Liberty wearing a burqa. And she said, New York is turning into Gaza. Sharia law is incoming. Let me repeat that. They're using 9/11 trauma, Islamophobia, anti-Arab tropes, and outright racism to attack a candidate whose biggest crime is wanting people to now go bankrupt trying to get to work. And honestly, I'm tired of pretending like this is normal. I never pretend that this is normal, but I'm tired of the media to say that it's like, oh, but it's just the GOP being the GOP. No. These people need to be impeached and out of office. And what's even more insulting is that this man, Sohran Mamdani, is the very definition of the man of the people. Let me tell you who he is, because they sure as hell won't. He was born in Uganda, came here at the age of 7 years old, raised in Queens, New York City public schools, graduated from Bronx Science, went to Bowdoin, I think that's how you say it, and studied Africana studies. He worked as a foreclosure counselor, literally helping families keep their homes. He still lives in a $2,200 rent stabilized apartment in Astoria. No car, commutes like the rest of us, trains, buses, delays and all. He married his wife, Rama Duwashi, a Syrian-American visual artist, this year. He met her on Hinge. By the way, just like the rest of us normal people nowadays. Most of us do social dating apps now. He's not running for some penthouse. He's not running from the penthouse. He's not backed by Wall Street donors. He's not playing politician. He is New York. And that's what makes him dangerous to the rich, to the system. Because when working class people see someone who looks like them, sounds like them, and actually gives a damn winning power, the system panics. Now look, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. This backlash is dangerous. Calling him a terrorist, that paints a target. Saying he's turning the city into Gaza, that invites violence. Demanding deportation for a Queens-born citizen, that's fascism. Plain as simple. And yet, when I mean Queens-born citizen, I don't mean like he was born there. He lives and breathes Queens, and he's a citizen of the United States. And yet most of the media, they're covering like it's some spicy Twitter drama. No, this is bigger. This is state-sanctioned racism being normalized in real time. And if we don't name it, it wins. Now, let's zoom out a little bit. You remember what they did to Ilhan Omar? The go back to your country stuff? The attacks on Rashida Tlaib for even daring to speak about Palestine? Even Barack Obama, you'll know that tired to make his middle name disqualify him. You remember, and even Trump says Barack Hussein Obama. Like, it's a pattern, it's a playbook. And now it's been used on Mamdani because he won't apologize for existing, because he doesn't contour himself to fit into some sanitized, white-friendly version of American, because he's not here to prove he belongs. He belongs, and he's not asking. But here's the twist. All that hate, all that noise, it didn't work. Turnout in his district was higher than expected. Young people showed up. Muslim families showed up. Renters, immigrants, gig workers, us. And what's even better? He wasn't backed by billionaires. He was backed by regular people. And memes. Seriously, go look up hot girls for Soran. It started as a meme, but it became a movement because people were hungry for authenticity. For someone real. For someone who doesn't treat politics like a brand, but like a duty. Like it's supposed to be. You're doing it for the people, not for your own corruption, for your money stuff. Trump. So let's say the quiet part aloud. The right-wing freakout is not about Mamdani's platform. It's about his existence, because he proves that a Muslim, socialist, immigrant kid from Queens can beat the machine. Now, by socialists, I mean democratic socialists. Don't try to clip this like that. And if that's possible, then their whole worldview, the power belongs to the wealthy, the white, the American-born in the narrowest sense, starts to crack. So they scream, they slander, they panic. But guess what? The rest of us, we're not panicking. We're organizing, we're voting, we're winning. And let me leave you with this. This is about left versus right. This is about right versus wrong. Because if this country truly believes in freedom of speech, and freedom of religion, and democracy, then we better start acting like it. And that means calling our bigotry, even when it's dressed in a suit and tie. It means rejecting fear, even when it's sold us as patriotism. And it means standing up for people like Soran Mamdani, not just when they win, but every step of the way. Because representation isn't radical. Caring about poor people isn't radical. Riding the subway and demanding your landlord stop hiking rent isn't radical. What is radical is pretending all of that makes you a terrorist. Alright, deep breath. We got a lot more to cover because next up, the Supreme Court. And y'all, what they just did might be even worse than this. But this moment right here, this NYC race, it wasn't a glitch. It's a signal. And the people who've been ignored, sidelined, and silenced for generations, we're coming for our seat at the table. And we're not asking for permission anymore.
And Mira tells us it is still working to put the pieces together and understand what this means. The Supreme Court's decision to limit federal judges' rulings does not have a direct impact on birthright citizenship. As of now, it leaves the fate of birthright citizenship in limbo. According to Mira, we are not yet at a point where birthright citizenship is terminated, but uncertainty remains.
We don't know what is going to happen. You know, we're watching this as it unfolds. It's a developing story, in other words.
Mira is continuing to monitor the impact that this will have on immigrants and their families. And they are in discussions with their legal teams on next steps. Live in studio, Kendall Jones, 16, WAPT News.
So let's get this one going. So while New York City certain party was having a celebration going on, and also the fireworks between these other politicians, there was something else going on. The Supreme Court was lighting up some kind of different party, one aimed right at the foundation of our rights. And here's the kicker: most people missed it, or worse, thought the decision was just more legal stuff for the policy nerds to worry about. But let me be real with you. These rulings, they're not abstract. They're not theoretical. They touch your classroom, your healthcare, your identity, and your rights. And the way they were handed down, that wasn't by accident. It was targeted, calculated, and designed to do one thing: shrink the Constitution for some while expanding control for others, mainly the President of the United States, who is becoming more and more of a dictator. First up, a technical one that might not sound scary until you realize what it means in practice: the nationwide injunctions. Sounds like a term out of a textbook, right? Let me break it down. When a federal judge rules that a policy is unconstitutional, they used to have the power to block that policy nationwide. That's how we've stopped dangerous executive orders in the past, from Muslim bans to DACA rollbacks to COVID-era evictions. But now, that is gone. The court just said, nah, that ruling only applies to the specific people in the case. Think of it this way. Imagine your house catches fire, and the fire department only sprays your roof because legally that's the only house name in the emergency call. Everyone else, watch it burn. That's what just happened. From now on, a single judge can't stop a harmful policy across the country, even if it's blatantly unconstitutional. So if a state rolls out a ban that violates civil rights, if ICE implements an abusive new deportation tactic, if healthcare rule denies people's treatment, you don't get relief. You don't get protection. You get told to file your own lawsuit and pray you survive long enough to win. And that's where legal standing comes in. The term standing means you have to show that you personally were harmed by a law before you can sue. No harm, no case. Now multiply that across millions of people who are poor, disabled, undocumented, or just struggling to survive. They don't have lawyers on speed dial. They can't wait years for court dates. So what does this ruling really do? It doesn't stop bad laws. It stops you from fighting them. Now, this also leads to the 14th Amendment, the birthright citizenship. The Supreme Court didn't say that birthright citizenship was the rule of this, but it's very clear that it was in their back of the minds with the 6-3 majority. So because what was stopping Donald Trump from saying we're stopping birthright citizenship was the injunctions nationwide. Now the Supreme Court said that the lower courts cannot do this, and now Donald Trump and the states can stop birthright citizenship. Now here's what could happen. If you're someone who live in a state that is pro birthright citizenship, and according to their state, and then you decide to go and do a vacation to another state that they don't agree with birthright citizenship, they can stop you and say that you're not a citizen. So you see what the problem is here? The reason why the Constitution is very valuable, why we take care of this, is that birthright citizenship is like, if you're born here, you're a citizen. That shouldn't be a discussion anymore. Why are we having this? Because Donald Trump said, they're just using these illegals are saying this. I'm like, this motherfucker seriously needs to be impeached anytime soon, because Melania Trump did not come here either. She came from a lie. She came in through the Einstein bill, whatever that was. That was supposed to be for scientists, for people who actually benefit the United States, not her. She definitely did not do any of that. She just was there to stand pretty next to the president. God, sorry, I keep calling him president. Sorry, I mean dictator. All right, sorry. Let's move on. Let's go next up to Mahmoud versus Taylor. This one was like watching the First Amendment get turned inside out. Here's the basic story. Some parents in Maryland wanted to opt their kid out of reading LGBTQ plus inclusive books in school. And I'm not talking about assigned books. I'm talking about library books, optional material. But the court said, sure, let them opt out. And with that ruling, they just handed every parent a religious veto over public school curriculum. Let me say that again. A personal belief can now believe what an entire classroom has access to in a public school. Now, I'm not saying religious freedom isn't real. It absolutely is. But this isn't about freedom. This is about the control. They want to make this into a Christian theocracy, because when schools have to cater to every single opt-out demand, then they don't just accommodate, they self-censor. They preempt the backlash. They pull books. They avoid controversy. That's not a neutral stance. That's a purge. And don't act surprised when the next opt-out demand is about slavery or Black history or the Holocaust or the civil rights movement, because it's already happening in states like Florida and Texas and Oklahoma. This ruling gives its federal cover. So let's be real. This is not about parental rights. This is about weaponized fragility. It's about giving the loudest, most extreme voices the power to shape what everyone else's kids learn. And don't forget, this is coming from a court that claims to be protecting freedoms. But what they're really doing is narrowing reality. These are the most corrupt judges I ever seen in my life. All right, let's go with the next case. It's really the last one that was kind of... Last one, and this one, it's really bad. It cuts deep. In United States versus Scarametti, the court upheld Tennessee's ban on gender-affirming care to trans minors. Let's be clear about what this means. This is not about surgery. This was about puberty blockers, about hormone therapy, about parents, doctors, and teens making medical decisions together. But the court said, nope, the states get to decide. Like, this is the same party that is screaming about small government. Now they're making it the biggest government ever. Their excuse of this, that is not discrimination because it applies to everyone. Yeah, that's a lie dressed in legal robes. They use what's called rational basis review, the weakest legal test. That standard basically says, if the government has any reason to do this, no matter how shaky, it's constitutional. That's how they're justifying discrimination against trans kids, with the legal equivalent of meh, sure, why not? So now a 14-year-old boy can get a testosterone for So now a 14-year-old cis boy can get testosterone for delayed puberty, but a 14-year-old trans boy denied the same treatment. Same body, same needs, different rights. All right, so what does this all mean? Let's look at the bigger picture. These aren't isolated decisions. These are coordinated rollbacks, a judicial playbook, one that says the courts won't protect you unless you can afford a lawyer, the schools won't include you unless your identity makes no one uncomfortable, and the government can decide your medical care, even if it harms you. This is not democracy, guys. This is democracy shrinking, case by case, ruling by ruling. Now, here's one that I forgot about. The one that Texas was pushing for, that they're okay, that you have to prove that you are 18-year-olds and above to go to a porn website. Now, that sounds like, yeah, well, sure, I want to make sure no minor goes into a porn website. That makes sense. However, here's the problem with that. You have to take a picture of your driver's license or any form of legal ID to prove that you're 18. Here's the problem. That goes to the state's database. So now your information, it's now being blackmailed by the state. That could be used against you for anything. So if you really want to jack off, you better be willing to let the state know where you're at or who you look like, whatever, and all that stuff. So, that's the problem with this, and they said that Texas had the right to do that. Here's the easier solution. Make sure your kids are not getting on those websites. Be the parent. All right. So, anyways, so it's not just the Supreme Court is not interpreting the Constitution anymore. They're adding it in. It's only 6 people, by the way. The 6 judges that are Republican judges, and that's my other part. Judges should not have political affiliations, because that's the problem. Justice is blind, right? So why are we having judges that say, well, I'm a GOP, I'm a liberal? There should be none. Apolitical. They have no way, but because we have 6 judges who obviously are corrupt, Justice Thomas, Alito, Amy Coney Barrett, all of them, they are as corrupt as you can get, and they still in the court system, and they claim victim mentality. Oh, Kavanaugh being accused of sexual assault. I mean, come on, man. Like, what else? Clarence Thomas has been caught taking bribes. Alito, his wife, is a freaking white nationalist. They're not protecting you. They're targeting us. And if it scares you, then if that scares you, it should. But fear alone isn't enough. What we need now is clarity, solidarity, resistance. We need to protest these people. We need to call them out. We need to be out there protesting every day. We need to shut down the system somehow. All right, let's move on.
Turning now to lawsuits piling up at the State Department of Education.
2 more lawsuits have been filed against State Superintendent Ryan Walters in the past week. One comes from a former Oklahoma State Department of Education employee who says she was wrongfully fired. The second from a former Norman teacher who we've told you about, who claims Walters' personal attacks on her led to violent threats against her. News Force Capitol Bureau Chief Kaylee Olivas is joining us live in studio with details. Kaylee, how many lawsuits has Walters been named in this year?
Well, Kevin, he's been named in 7 lawsuits so far this year. 3 have been filed by former State Department of Education employees. 1 has been filed by a former Norman High School teacher, and 3 remaining deal with schools or instruction. Now, the 2 women who have most recently filed lawsuits in this stack say they have one goal in mind: hold Ryan Walters accountable.
These teachers need to be taken out and shot.
Should not only be fired, but also swinging from a tree. If Summer tried this in Afghanistan, they'd cut out her tongue for starters.
Hundreds of vulgar messages flooding one phone last August. Summer Blommier was a Norman High School teacher and previously a Piedmont Public Schools Teacher of the Year. At the start of the 2022 school year, she posted this QR code in her classroom. It would lead students to a public library where they could virtually read any book they wanted. But then State Secretary of Education Ryan Walters saw it differently. Once Blommier resigned from the Norman School District, Walters issued a letter. He accused Blommier of providing students with porn, casting a shadow of shame on educators.
If I want to keep teaching in a classroom, I will most likely have to go elsewhere.
She has since moved to New York, but leaves her mark on Oklahoma with this federal lawsuit. She's suing Walters personally for defamation, slander and libel, and false representation. Following her lawsuit, a second legal punch to Walters. Former State Department of Education employee Janessa Bointy is suing OSDE and Walters for wrongful termination.
I'm not going to be silenced.
Not only was she handling grants aimed at providing mental health resources to rural eastern Oklahoma schools, she is a mom of 4 Edmond Public School students. After a student committed suicide earlier this year, she decided to share resources at an Edmond board meeting in March.
Able to speak about something near and dear to my heart, child and adolescent mental health.
Her lawsuit claims that 2-minute public comment got her fired. OSDE argues she broke confidentiality rules, violated the media policy, and took leave time improperly. Bointy's attorney says each claim is baseless, especially the improper use of time and leave, because that situation happened 10 months prior to her being fired.
They simply threw that in as another issue to frankly make Janessa sound bad. And what we now know is that Ryan Walters has a pattern of censoring speech from its employees.
Now, we did reach out to the State Department of Education for comment on both lawsuits. They say they're not able to comment on outstanding personnel matters, but they did confirm Summer Blommier's teaching license will be stripped by the state board. That has yet to be scheduled, though.
Okay, so that was all so far with the national news. Now, let's bring it back to my home state of Oklahoma. We got a man on a mission. And by mission, I mean full-blown state-sponsored culture war. Ryan Walters, if you've been a listener of this podcast, you have heard his name thousands of times. He's the state superintendent of public instruction, and he's back at it. And what is he doing this time? Blocking teacher certifications again, targeting librarians, demanding Bible curriculum in public schools, all under the fake banner of protecting kids from indoctrination. Let's break it down. Let's start with the latest attack. Walters is now rejecting teacher certification renewals based on personal social media posts and vague accusation of anti-American values. And no, this isn't satire. He's invoking the Oklahoma statute HB 1775, passed in 2021, that bans teachers from discussing so-called divisive concepts in classrooms. But here's the truth. It's not about divisive concepts. It's about dividing the public from the truth. Because what gets labeled divisive is, in this new era, talking about racism, mentioning gender, teaching kids about the real history of this country, from indigenous genocide to redlining to Jim Crow. And let me be real, it's not just policy, it's punishment. In 2023, Walters threatened to revoke the license of a teacher who shared a QR code to the Brooklyn Public Library Books Unbanned project, a digital library designed to give students access to banned books. His claim, it violates state law by promoting, and I quote, pornographic material. The books in question, The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. Yeah, that's where we are here in Oklahoma. Now let's talk about something that should chill every educator in their country. Ryan Walters, an elected state official, somehow invited Shaya Rashik, better known as the Lips of TikTok, to Oklahoma to consult on school library policy. She is not a resident of Oklahoma. She doesn't live here. She's not even, how is she even part of this? Now, this is a person whose account has doxed teachers, outed LGBTQ plus Jews, and incited harassment campaigns so extreme that led to bomb threats at hospitals that provide gender-affirming care. I don't care if you believe that about this, but bomb threat to a hospital, to innocent lives, should not be an acceptable answer. And this is who Walters thinks should shape our education in Oklahoma. What's next? Alex Jones guest lecturing on science? I should have not mentioned that because now he's going to have him. Let's call it what it is. This isn't about parental rights. This is state-sponsored bullying. It's about using national outreach machines to vilify teachers, terrify school boards, and control what kids are allowed to read. Now, here's the latest twist in the crusade. On June 27, 2024, Ryan Walters announced that all public schools in Oklahoma must begin teaching the Bible and the Ten Commandments, effective immediately. No vote, no debate, just a mandate. He cited House Bill 1895, but here's the issue. HB 1895 doesn't require biblical instruction. It allows for optional religious texts for a historical context. But Walters isn't interested in context. He's interested in control. And this isn't happening in a vacuum. As part of a coordinated national campaign. In Texas, Governor Greg Abbott signed a bill that allows schools to display the Ten Commandments in every classroom. In Louisiana, the state now requires all public classrooms to post the Ten Commandments by 2025, this school year. And in Florida, Ron DeSantis made civics education a tool for pushing a patriotic version of history that omits slavery, whitewashes our colonization, and demonizes anything woke. These are the four people that are doing the most harm to our country. Not the liberal wokeness. These four. Every time something happens about culture war, is these four states. Now, what's happening in Oklahoma is not just a red state one-off. It's a playbook. Step 1. Paint teachers as the enemy. Step 2, rewrite history to fit a nationalistic narrative. Step 3, use outrage, manufacture a reel to justify authoritarian policy. Ryan Walters has called teachers agents of leftist indoctrination. He's compared the education system to terror cells, and every time he doubles down, he gets more airtime, more money, more attention, and that's the point. Because this isn't just about banning books or controlling curriculum. It's about preparing a generation not to question power, just like what Daddy Trump wants, apparently, because that's what he's doing with Trump. He calls him daddy. He is a sick person. It's about replacing public schools with privatized indoctrination centers, backed by right-wing donors and political action committees who want your child to recite scripture but never read the new Jim Crow. And let's not forget, Walters was one of the first statewide officials to call for criminal penalties against teachers who speak about gender or race. This isn't conservative policies. This is state repression in a polo shirt with a flag pin. Now, who's benefit? Ask yourself, who gains from kids who don't know their rights? Who benefits when classrooms are stripped of nuance, stripped of truth, and filled with fear? Because it sure as hell isn't the students. It's not the teachers. It's the politicians, the ideologues, the corporations waiting to replace your neighborhood school with a voucher-funded, privately owned prep academy for the fucking rich. Ryan Walters isn't just attacking Oklahoma. He's running a pilot program for authoritarianism, and we better shut it down before it scales nationwide. Look, I teach in classrooms. I've watched good teachers walk away because they couldn't stomach the censorship, the threats, the low pay, the disrespect. I've seen students lose trust in schools, not because of some woke agenda, but because the adults in charge keep failing them. We say education is the foundation of democracy. Well, this is demolition, and if we don't fight for the truth in those classrooms, we're handing over the future. It's ridiculous. I don't know what else to say. I just wish the home state will do something. I want this governor state to get rid of this man, but also I want him to be arrested for all the fraud that he's done. He needs to be arrested. Not just because of what a terrible person he is and all the damage he's done. He is the reason there was bomb threats and he's in the state of Oklahoma. He incited this rhetoric. But he also needs to be arrested for taking money from the state payers, like the state money and taxpayers' money to do his campaign. But I don't know what else we can do here, because this is a red ruby state that we're 49th in education for a fucking reason. This right here. This guy, the craziest part, he used to be a history teacher at McAllister High School. This man used to know what history was, and I'm pretty sure he's doing this to gain political points. And you know the worst part is, it's not working. Anyways, sorry. All right, let's move on.
As you've grown accustomed to my presentations over my 34 years in South Florida newscasts, confidently, I went on TV and I told you it's going to turn. You don't need to worry. It is going to turn. And I am here to tell you that I am not sure I can do that this year, because of the cuts, the gutting, the sledgehammer attack on science in general, and I could talk about that for a long, long time, and how that is affecting the U.S. Leadership in science over many years, and how we're losing that leadership, and this is a multi-generational impact on science in this country, all right? But specifically, let's talk about the federal government cuts to the National Weather Service and to NOAA. Did you know that Central and South Florida National Weather Service offices are currently basically 20 to 40% understaffed? From Tampa to Key West, including the Miami office, 20 to 40% understaffed. Now, this type of staffing shortage is having impacts across the nation, because there's been a nearly 20% reduction in weather balloon launches that carry those radiosondes. And what we're starting to see is that the quality of the forecasts is becoming degraded. There's also a chance, because of some of these cuts, that NOAA Hurricane Hunter aircraft will not be able to fly this year, and with less reconnaissance missions, we may be flying blind, and we may not exactly know how strong a hurricane is before it reaches the coastline, like happened a couple of years ago in Hurricane Otis in Acapulco, Mexico. So I was asked to talk about this today. I'm glad I was. I just want you to know that what you need to do is call your representatives and make sure that these cuts are stopped.
All right, I had to take a quick breather. So let's move on to the next section. Let me put something on your radar, pun intended, that you probably didn't hear on the news this week. And the fact that you didn't, that's no accident. Because quietly and with barely a whisper of explanation, the United States federal government just took a major step that puts millions of lives at greater risk this hurricane season. They're cutting off access to microwave satellite data. Now, I know what you're thinking. Hey man, I'm not a scientist. What does that even mean? Let's break it down. I had to research this. Microwave satellite data is not just another weather report. It's the backbone of how we predict hurricanes' formation, intensity, and trajectory. This isn't your local Doppler radar. We're talking about polar orbiting satellites operated by United States Department of Defense, which collects microwave radiation data from the atmosphere. Why does that matter? Because microwave data tells us three things: the core temperature of tropical cyclones, the moisture levels in storm clouds, and the wind speeds hidden deep inside hurricanes before they hit land. Without it, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, the very agency responsible for hurricane forecasting, can't accurately model storm behavior. And let me remind you, we are already in a record-breaking hurricane season. Now let's connect the dots. Right now, ocean temperatures in the Atlantic are the highest they've ever been, and that's not a hyperbole. The water off the coast of Florida hit 101 degrees Fahrenheit last year. That's not a warm pool, that's a hot tub for hurricanes. And the science is clear: hotter water fuels stronger storms. It's why we're seeing more rapid intensification events, whereas storm goes from a category 1 to a category 4 in less than 24 hours. Without microwave data, forecasters can't catch that in time. That means less warning, less time to evacuate, more devastation, more deaths. So now, ask yourself, why would a government shut off access to the very tools that save lives during these storms? So, the satellite collecting this data are run by the Department of Defense, because in many cases these tools were launched by military surveillance, not public safety. But here's the thing, for decades, NOAA and other civilian agencies have had shared access, because, knowing when a hurricane is coming kind of matters. Until now, apparently. In May 2025, the Pentagon announced that it will restrict access to this data for non-military agencies, citing national security concerns. Funny coming from Pickaxe who leaked information, but hypocrisy is amazing. Translation: the war machine comes first, even if it means civilian disaster preparedness takes a backseat. This is the climate crisis colliding with the security of state. Instead of investing in better forecasting and community resilience, we're hoarding data behind bureaucratic walls. It's like the government looked at the sky and said, we'd rather keep it classified than keep people safe. And that's what they are. I mean, come on, man. Like, the Republican Party only wanted your votes. And look what's happening. You remember FEMA? All these states, when the campaign went after the hurricane hit and when in the straight parts of North Carolina, and Trump was like, Joe Biden didn't do his job, FEMA, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, the people in red states are still waiting for FEMA, and Trump denied this federal help. He doesn't care for you. Come on, man. Whatever. Anyways, now let's talk about who pays the price. Coastal cities like New Orleans, Miami, Houston, where tens of thousands live below the poverty line, just can't drive inland. Now you see the what I said, or New Orleans, Miami, Houston, Democratic country, cities. Shocking. Caribbean territories like Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands, where outdated infrastructure means even the Category 1 storm can wipe out powers for weeks. In rural communities that rely entirely on public agencies, not private consultants, for emergency alerts and evacuation plans. This isn't just an inconvenience, it's a potential death sentence for the most vulnerable. And the worst part, they won't even know what hit them. Because without real-time atmospheric data, hurricane forecasting becomes guesswork, and you can't evacuate a coastline on a maybe. Look, I've said this before and I'll say it again. You don't need bombs to start a war. Sometimes all it takes is a budget cut, a classified memo, and a shrug from Washington. We're facing a climate emergency, and the government is acting like it's a PR problem. You want to know why? Because disaster means dollars. From private insurers to contracted cleanup firms to FEMA suppliers. There's a whole economy built on catastrophe. Now, the FEMA suppliers one is kind of tricky because obviously they're trying to cut FEMA. So that one's a little tricky. It's more like the private insurance and contracted cleanup firms. And when disaster response becomes business, prevention becomes bad for profit. That's why billionaires can fly out, but poor folks get left behind. That's why satellites go dark and nobody says a word. And that's why when the next storm hits, we'll be the ones paying the price, while some Pentagon exec gets promoted for resource prioritization. Now, so what do we do when the people in charge turn off the radar? Well, we become each other's warning system. We organize mutual aid networks. We demand state transparency. We hold officials accountable, not just after a disaster, but before. And we don't let them convince us that this was just a mistake, because it's not. It's a message. If you're not in uniform, not in a boardroom, not a lobbyist, not an insider, you're on your own. Good luck, little buddy. But here's the thing, we always had each other. And in this storm, that's our strongest shelter. Like, remember Katrina? Like, I wish, did we already forget about the disaster of Katrina or all the hurricanes that led up to later on? I mean, I don't know, man. It's just getting ridiculous. And the worst part is that the people who voted for this they're okay with it. I don't know what else this regime has to do for you to stop believing everything he says, or to start saying, "Oh my God, this guy's corrupt." But I know cult members will be cult members, so I don't know. But I don't know why weather became political. How is this political? You know, and I've seen this also here in Oklahoma with our tornado preparations and stuff. Our National Weather Service cut a lot of weather forecasters from our National Weather Service in Norman. And that is noticeable because now the predictions are not as accurate as they were. We would see a time when it says low tornadoes chance and very low tornado chance, and all of a sudden we had an outbreak of 5 to 6 tornadoes on that day. So in this last year, they were more accurate, and now this is getting ridiculous because I will look at it in the National Weather Service to make sure we are prepared. What do I need to do? But this year it's like, okay, is this accurate or what? So anyways, let's move on because this I don't know how weather becomes political. It's crazy.
U.S. and China confirmed details of a trade framework allowing shipments of rare earths from China. China's foreign ministry signaled it will export the minerals in return for the U.S. canceling restrictive measures against Beijing. Top U.S. and Chinese officials met for trade talks earlier this month after both sides accused the other of violating a prior agreement. In the meantime, President Trump is ending trade talks with Canada effective immediately, and he is threatening a new tariff. north. In a post to Truth Social, Trump references an incoming Canadian tax on digital service providers, including ones based in the U.S. He calls the tax a direct and blatant attack on our country. Canada is the United States' second largest trading partner. Canadian officials haven't immediately responded. U.S. stocks closed at record highs today, despite tensions over trade. This marks a stunning turnaround since the stock market was flirting with bear market territory in early April. The S&P 500 gained 0.5%, finishing above its previous record set in February. The Nasdaq Composite added 0.5%, also setting its own all-time high. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 1%. Stocks pulled back after President Trump's decision to halt trade talks with Canada before the market steadied.
All right, so here's the economic update that should have everybody's eyes wide open. Trump's team, and yeah, he's calling the shots again. He just unveiled a massive new round of tariffs that could shake global trade, spike consumer prices, and hit the American wallet like a freight train. We're talking about new tariffs on everything, from Canadian timber to Chinese semiconductors, even generic medicines and critical raw materials used in electric vehicles, batteries, and tech production. And if you think that's just tough on China talk, keep listening, because it's economic self-sabotage. Now, what is the 2025 tariff plan? This isn't just one tariff. It's a layered web of trade restrictions. According to Trump's 2025 plan, recently previewed by his economic advisors and leaked to several business outlets, the proposal includes 1. A universal 10% tariff on all imports across the board. 2. And a 60% tariff especially in Chinese goods, which will hit everything from iPhones to car parts to antibiotics. 3. Possible tariffs on allies, including Mexico, Canada, and the European Union, under the banner of economic nationalism. And don't be fooled by the headlines that say these are proposals or under review, because we've seen this movie before. In 2018, Trump launched similar tariffs on steel, aluminum, and Chinese imports. And guess what? U.S. manufacturing jobs still declined. Prices rose, and American farmers needed government bailouts. Sorry, I just realized I said aluminum for my American friends. And let's talk about consequences. First, inflation. We're already dealing with high grocery prices, housing costs, and prescription drugs hikes. Now throw in a tariff on important pharmaceutical ingredients, which makes up about 80% of active ingredients used in U.S. medication, and guess what? Your medicine just got more expensive. Same goes for tech. Semiconductors, smartphone chips, car parts, the things we use every day will skyrocket in price. All in the name of bringing jobs home. But here's the kicker. Those jobs, they're not coming back. Manufacturing doesn't magically reappear. Companies don't say, hey, we'll build a plant in Ohio now. They say, let's reroute to Vietnam, Mexico, or India, where costs are lower. So instead of helping the American worker, these tariffs push companies to relocate jobs overseas anyway, just not China. And meanwhile, you're still paying more. Second, retaliation. When you hit other countries with tariffs, they hit back. That's exactly what happened last time. In 2018 and 2019, China retaliated with tariffs on soybeans, pork, beef, and corn, crushing American farmers in the Midwest. The United States government had to bail them out with $28 billion in emergency aid. Now we're teeing up for round 2, and this one might be the longest round ever. This time the countries are already preparing alternative trade routes. Think BRICS nation, or BRICS, BRICS nations, or Asian Pacific partnerships that exclude the United States entirely. You think America first wins global respect? Nah, it's isolating us. Now here's the part that burns. Even conservative economists are sounding the alarm. According to the Tax Foundation, Trump's proposed 10% universal tariff could raise consumer price by 2.5% on top of the existing inflation, eliminate over 500,000 jobs, reduce GDP by as much as 2%. And actually, there's an update to that. This quarter it was a negative GDP. So great job, Trump. You're doing the best. You're the only president that we know so far who has a negative GDP. And sure, it's a tax on you because tariffs on pain in the countries we're punishing. They're paid by importers, which means companies and then you, the consumer, the checkout line. So when you see the word tariff, translates to tariff equals price hike. Now let's be real. This isn't policy. It's a performance. It sounds strong to say we're getting tough on China. It plays well in rallies, makes for a spicy segment on Fox News. But behind that podium, this is a PR stunt dressed as an economic strategy. Because here's the inconvenient truth. The U.S. trade deficit didn't shrink under Trump. It grew. U.S. manufacturing output fell in 2019 before the pandemic. And despite 4 years of America First, the biggest winners were multinational corporations that dodged tariffs by shifting supply chains everywhere. You can't fix a broken economy by slapping taxes on toothbrushes and calling it patriotism. That's not leadership. That's just a rerun. You know, something that Trump knows about. Oh gosh, yeah. Like his show The Apprentice, all the reruns. God, it was such a terrible show. And we already know how this one ends. More debt, more division, and more damage to the very people politicians claim they're helping. And that leads to like the big beautiful bill, the one disaster bill that they are implementing more the tax break for the rich. And not a tax break for anybody who's a middle class and below. And it has been proven that this bill can, if it passes the Senate, is going to put $2.4 trillion in our national debt. Like, we're about to go broke. More broke than before, apparently. And they want to increase the military budget, not the military budget, the defense budget again. To $1 trillion in defense budget. Because this isn't a partisan take, it's an economic reality. We need a real trade policy, one that invests in domestic infrastructure, support laborers, and modernize our supply chains. Not knee-jerk tariffs, not campaign slogans, and definitely not economic grenades disguised as patriotism. Because in the end, these tariff wars, they're not fought in Congress, they're not fought in Beijing. They're fought in the pharmacy, in the gas station, and your grocery cart. And unless we demand better, which apparently doesn't matter, we're going to keep paying this price again and again. Anyways, let's move on. So let me be clear to end this episode. What we saw this week, it wasn't chaos. It wasn't dysfunction. It was the playbook. Running exactly as intended. Find an enemy, blame the teachers, blame the immigrants, blame the trans kids, blame the progressives, blame the people who dare to say, we deserve more. Then while we are all arguing over who's to blame, they distract, they divide, they defund. They chip away at every single thing that gives working class people even a shot at dignity, just to survive. You know, that thing about the Constitution, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? You know, nothing important apparently. Like public schools are always under attack again. Affordable healthcare? Gutted. Housing? Out of reach. Climate data? Classified. Libraries? Banned. Teachers? Of course we're silenced. But... And though they wrap it into patriotism, it's just so annoying, man. Like all the time, it's like it's protecting the children, parental rights, religious freedoms, and slogans that sound noble until you realize they're being used to erase people. You know, so I said a while back in my first Off the Record episode that No Kings protests, they were nice, and I caught a lot of the flack for that. People, and here's the reason I got flagged. It's because I said they were nice, but they were not enough. That's not going to change anything. And a lot of people said, like, but it matters that we showed up. It sends a message. And I get that. I do. But I'm standing by what I said. I stand by that this protest was just a little blip in the system for them. Because what I said was, you cannot expect change when you only have a 2-hour protest, take your Instagram reels and everything, and then go home. We need to learn from other countries who actually did a protest, who actually there was some change. Because the truth is, it didn't change a thing at all. They didn't see those marches and stop. They saw them and they dug in deeper and wrote policy to make sure the next protest could be surveilled, criminalized, or ignored. And they saw the signs, the chants, the hashtags, and they said, cool, now go back to your regular scheduled oppression. And you saw this was the result of the Supreme Court this week. They probably saw this and they said, ooh, we gotta go deeper. We gotta own the libs. It's like symbolic protest without systemic disruption is performance. It's like, it might make you feel good. It might even spark some hope. But when the dust settles, the people in power are still in power. Unless we shut the damn system down. And no, I don't mean violence. I mean like mass refusal. Like, I mean coordinated action, walkouts, boycotts, strikes, civil disobedience that makes the system so uncomfortable that it has to respond. Because fear is not just a tactic anymore. It's the policy. It's the currency. It's the governing logic. It's what justifies the bans, the books removals, the gag orders, the cops in schools, the cages at the border, the surveillance of protesters, the rollbacks of rights, the deportation of legal and U.S. citizens. They sell it to you every night on TV. They baked it into law. They call it safety, but it's fear. And fear makes people easier to control. Now, I've seen this. I've seen where in schools where chairs get empty every week because the teacher couldn't take it anymore. And not because they were lazy, not because they weren't committed, but because they were exhausted, underpaid, over-policed, and told, just teach and shut up. Now I watched entire families walk away from public education convinced that some shiny voucher will save their kid, only to find themselves locked into racist, under-regulated, corporate-run schools that care more about disciplined scores than human beings. And I've seen politicians wrap themselves in flags and scripture, then vote to gut veterans' healthcare, slash food stamps, ban books, cut housing for the poor, and still have the nerve to say they're pro-life. So at some point, we gotta ask, how much longer are we gonna let them sell us that lie? How much longer are we gonna keep pretending this is about left versus right, when it's really about power versus the people? Because if we don't name what's happening, if we don't call this out for what it is, they will keep winning. Not because they're smarter, not because they're right, but because we are too polite, too hesitant, too scared to disrupt a system that it's already drowning us. We owe it to each other, especially to the ones coming up behind us, to stop selling for representation without revolution. We need to stop asking for crumbs for the table that was never built for us and start building a new one. Because if fear is the policy, then courage better be the response. Again, and I learned this a long time ago. I remember in Colombia, there was one day I was in school, and I was in first grade, if I recall. And then the teachers told us we couldn't go home. Why? Because there was a public transportation protest going on. So all the public transportation people, they shut down the city. They blocked streets, everything. So we were forced to sleep in school that night. And you know what happened after that? The people who were working in public transportation, they got paid more. They got a raise and they got insurance, like health benefits. That's what America needs. This little protest about, and then you get out at 9 in the morning and then you back at home by noon, it's not gonna cut it, guys. You need a systemic shutdown. Remember when the teachers walked out? there was no teachers for a while, and the schools had to shut down. And the teachers demanded a higher pay raise, and they got it. Some did. Others were still fighting. But my point is, what I'm saying is that yes, you can make your little signs and say that guns have more rights than people, which, by the way, yes, correct. But you cannot just expect a change in a 3-hour protest, because now it's forgotten. We moved on. You want to make it to the history books, you gotta shut it down completely. We're being too nice. Democrats need to grow a spine, especially the establishment Democrats. They need to move out, get out of the way. We need more politicians like AOC and Mamdani. I don't know what else to tell you guys. I think we can't wait until the midterms. We have to do something. And by something, it has to be through the legal process. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you guys, because I think I have notes right here and a little in script to follow along. Right now, I'm just kind of thinking out loud to myself. And every time I see the same things, there's some people I follow and I respect their content. I'm just tired of hearing about shocking Trump given big loss in court. And I listen to it and I'm like, okay, how's this gonna help? Because it doesn't. It never helps. At the end, you see what happened again. The Supreme Court, it's under Trump's thumb. No matter how many lawsuits, how many things we do to Trump, he's still in office. So I want you to think about that, because we're in a really a time that the Constitution doesn't matter to anybody. It doesn't matter anymore. Birthright citizenship can be gone next month. Anybody who was born in the United States, who looks brown or immigrant, can be gone. And I didn't mention this earlier, and I just realized that there was a representative or senator who wanted to denaturalize Mamdani just because he's a progressive. These people are racist. And you know what? I don't want to mince my words anymore. The 77 million that voted for Trump, you got what you voted for. Now I want you to suffer at this point. You deserve every single part. If he abandonment, you deserve this suffering. I don't care. I know Kamala Harris wasn't my candidate that I wanted, but for the love of God, compared to the walking orange orangutan, come on. Anyways, I'll see y'all next time. I hope you guys have a safe July, and I'll see you next time. This was The Problem With Off the Record. Follow me in all my socials and listen to wherever you get your podcasts, and follow me on YouTube as well. Take it easy.